Podcast Answer Man, episode number 167.
Entertaining, educational, and encouraging content that makes a difference.
This is GSPN.TV.
Join the community.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft. Of course, this is a weekly podcast where I come here to answer a majority of your questions free, no charge whatsoever, hundreds of hours of content that you can find over at podcastanswerman.com. And I'm excited about the things that I want to share today because it's all about podcasting. So I'm excited every week because I get to control the content, which is one of the things that I love most about podcasting. Now, for those of you who are interested in knowing, today I'm going to give you a rundown of all the things we're going to cover here. I've got 4 pieces of audio feedback, and they are going to be on topics such as how do I change my category in iTunes, my thoughts on PayPal payments, Blog Talk Radio, and I've even got some constructive criticism of the Podcast Answer Man podcast. All of that and probably more here on today's show. So to kick things off, I'm going to turn over to my good friend Winston over there at upickuniversity.com, I believe. And while he's doing his feedback here, I'll look up and verify that that's the correct address.
Hey, Cliff. This is Winston from the upickuniversity.org podcast.
.org.
Quick question for the Podcast Answer Man. You helped us set up our iTunes, and we've got our first podcast out there and out in the world of iTunes. And when you helped us set it up, you helped us set up a category under business news. And now that we are in process, I'd like to set up another category closer to our actual focus, like nonprofits. So how do I change my iTunes category? That's my question today. Thanks for your help. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right, Winston, thank you very much. And by the way, congratulations on the release of your very first episode. And I think he said it there, upickuniversity.org is his website. And I am going to pull that up here right now, upickuniversity.org. And yes, that does pull it right up. And their very first episode is online, and I think they did an excellent job of doing their very first episode. Not scripted at all, very much just very informative as to who they are, what they are planning to do with the podcast. I wish they would have done the personal introductions at the beginning instead of putting the, this is the technical, what we're going to cover in the podcast. I really got into the podcast when it got into the personal stories. In fact, I love the talk of I think it was 1985. Go check that out. Episode 1 of You Pick University podcast and see if you can find the conversation about what happened in 1985. But I love the personal feel, and I hope that they're able to continue to keep that up, and I'm sure that they will. But your question, of course, Winston, is how do you change the category from being business to something nonprofit? Now, I guess I'm assuming that since you have a topic or a category in mind that you've looked and seen that there is a topic for nonprofits, and assuming that there is such a category in iTunes, then to change it is very easy because you actually followed my instructions of using feedburner.com to set up your podcast. So all you need to do is you go to feedburner.com, and once you are logged in, you'll click on the appropriate feed for the podcast. And then once you're into the main dashboard for your UP University podcast, you simply click on the tab at the top that says Optimize. And then once you click on that tab on the left-hand corner, you'll see a bunch of options. You want to click on SmartCast. And when you click on SmartCast on the right-hand side of the screen, you will then see all the different iTunes settings. And, of course, the categories being right up there near the top. And the nice thing is you can actually choose a main category, and you can actually list your podcast in other categories as well. So you don't have to just stick with one category. Although if there is one for nonprofits, I'd obviously make that your first category choice. and then you can add additional if you find other additional categories that would be appropriate for the listing of your show. So anyway, I hope that helps you. If you do not have FeedBurner, and you're using some other podcasting plugin like PowerPress and stuff like that, it's not too difficult to go into your PowerPress settings and change that category in the iTunes settings there as well. But I really encourage all of my clients to use FeedBurner for the iTunes version, or creating the iTunes compatibility. I've just been, and mostly because of the fact that I've been using FeedBurner since since early 2000, since 2005. I've been using FeedBurner since 2005, and since the day I've been using them, I've created 22 different podcasts, or actually 24 different podcasts, and have done more than 2,200 episodes, and have never had an issue with my FeedBurner feed. And I can't say the same has been true for all those little podcast plugins and stuff like that. I've certainly, as a consultant, had to help several folks who have had some issues with some things gone a little wonky in some of the plugins. And I will just say, in all fairness to my friends over at Blueberry, I'm mostly talking about that horrendous plugin called PodPress. Oh my gosh, was that a nightmare. I'm so glad that I don't really see that popping up too often anymore. All right, so let's move on to the next call, which is coming in from Josh, who has a question about PayPal.
Hi, Cliff. This is Josh Livingston from Portsmouth, Ohio. This is for your Podcast Answer Man podcast, and I had a question for you on what your thoughts were in regards to using PayPal. Now, I've heard of a few folks that that I know have had problems with PayPal as far as in the way of security. Now, if this is something that I'm planning on using on possible PayPal invoices, I do want to make sure that I'm not going to expose myself to loss of private information and hacking into PayPal networks. So as far as in the way of maybe fraud protection or just something in that area, is there anything that I need to be wary of, other than what I've mentioned, or is there something I can help do to help safeguard myself against that? Anyway, Cliff, any thoughts or advice you have on this subject would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for all you do.
All right. Well, Josh, thank you very much. And just like David in our chat room, who says that comment surprises me, that comment also surprises me, especially in the comment I think we're both agreeing upon, or at least the one that surprises me, is the idea that people have complained that they've had some security issues with PayPal. And wow, it's quite the opposite in my experience. And again, I've been using PayPal since PayPal was first introduced. And I don't know what year that was, but I know, well, let's see, Megan is 10. So I know 10 years ago I was using PayPal. And I have had zero issues with PayPal. In fact, when it comes to security, matter of fact, I've received a call just this week. I got a phone call, and I picked up the phone and it says, "Hey, this is a security call generated by the use of your debit card. Please stay on the line for a PayPal representative." And of course, I just have to wait for a second for them to actually connect me to a representative. And then what happens is they say, we're just doing a check on some recent activity on your card and want to confirm that you have authorized this information. They just confirm who I am. Obviously, they dialed my phone number, which is on record. And then they read off the last 4 or 5 debit transactions. And they just read off the amounts and the name of the placed it there too, and I confirmed that yes, I did place all those payments, and then they said thank you very much, that's all we needed. And I've had this happen over the course of the last 3 years. I've probably got about 4 or 5 of those phone calls, and they're constantly looking out for my security, and when they see that I go most of a month without using my debit card at all, and then all of a sudden I'm putting I think we put like $2,000 each month on my debit card in one day when we were paying all the bills for the month for Podcast Answer Man business. In health insurance, I pay I have a PayPal debit card, so I get like 1.5% cash back or something like that. And so, my health insurance bill is ridiculously expensive. And so we keep the money in PayPal and use the PayPal debit card to get that cash back. And we pay all of our bills, for the business using the PayPal debit card. And, I've never had a problem. Now, as far as accepting payments, I send PayPal invoices to my clients and have done so all the time. People will oftentimes say, okay, I'd like to pay you. Do you accept credit card? And I say, I don't accept credit card unless you use the credit card to pay me via PayPal. And for those who have never had a PayPal account, they are able to actually use PayPal to pay me via credit card and not even have to sign up for an account. So that is a potential ability or benefit there. And for those who do have a PayPal account, that it's not a problem for them to be able to just attach their credit card that they want to use as a funding source and then pay me using that card. Never have, in fact, in the last 2.5 years that I've been doing this full time as my career, I will tell you that I have lost only two pieces of business as the result of not taking credit cards directly. Of course, not only do I have my clients who I've invoiced and have pay me for products and or services through PayPal, I have a few hundred people who have subscriptions to gspn.tv Plus who are paying $10 per month via PayPal. And PayPal just automatically debits their PayPal account $10 every month and puts that into my account. So I have had huge success with PayPal. And more so recently, I have been trying to get more of my clients to pay via check, because one of the things, when you get to the level that I do, you recognize that they want to move you into a business account, which I obviously understand, and they get 3% of whatever payment comes in. And so these days, I actually encourage my clients to pay me via check, which means there's no processing fee on my end, and I get to keep 100% of what my client pays me. When you look at the equipment that I sell, for example, I'm not making a huge, gigantic profit margin on this stuff. And when you look at an $800 order, and I'm not great at math, and that's why I love my big giant iPad here with my big huge jumbo calculator. But if you think about that, that's $800, let's just say, times 0.03, that's $24. Actually, that's not that big of a deal. But I've certainly had clients that owed, they've purchased, $2,500 worth of equipment. And in the old days, I would just eat that cost. And that, of course, would be $75 given to PayPal. Now, is it worth $75 to have that payment processed? You betcha. And it would really be no less. It wouldn't be a whole lot less if I actually had a merchant account and accepted credit cards. So I think PayPal is totally worthwhile. But I prefer taking payments by check, and I don't have any processing fee, and that's $75 more that I get to keep in my pocket. And my clients certainly don't mind paying me by check, because usually a majority of the time, the people that I work with, they've already listened to me for hundreds of hours, or at least tons of hours, and they have come to know me, and they very much trust me. And so they're like, yeah, I'll pay you by check. That's not a problem at all. So it works out very well. Moving right along with, let's see here, Clint's feedback on what I shared last week on the Snowball microphone, and also wants to know what I feel about Blog Talk Radio and services like it.
Hey, Cliff, how you doing? This is Clint Sprague from Fort Worth, Texas. Hey, I hope you can hear me okay. I'm actually calling from the airport, and I wanted to get this message to you while it was on my mind. First of all, I want to say thanks for your last podcast about the Blue Snowball microphone. I had already made that purchase, and I had called last week to get some information about that. Then I listened to your podcast, and so now I need to go out and get a $20 microphone and a nice affordable mixer. But anyway, my new question is, I have some friends of mine who actually started a podcast, and they actually started using a service called Blog Talk Radio. And I was wondering if you're familiar with that. And I wanted to get your opinion, since I know you spoke very strongly on the Blue Snowball microphones. I wanted to get your opinion on services like Blog Talk Radio and some of the others that are out there that kind of a soup to nuts beginner create your own podcast in a box, so to speak. So I want to get your views on that. I'd really love it if you had a show specifically dedicated to these types of services. But if not, I'd love for you to answer my question. Again, thank you for the wonderful show. I love the podcast, and hope to hear from you soon. Take care. Bye.
All right, Clint, thank you so much. And I am going to answer your question in just a moment. But before I go any further, I do want to say one other thing here. I was looking at the chat room. They're asking about check processing versus electronic. And one of the things that I am using, I use a program called Check Writer. And if I can find it here, give me 1 second. I am going to pull up a podcast episode that I will link to in the show notes that you can listen about the program that I use to collect check payments, because it has saved me thousands, and I am not kidding when I say thousands of dollars. So 1 second, I'm going to look this up. Okay, so I'm back. I just went ahead and researched that. It's episode number 18 of Business Tech Weekly, and it is currently a Plus member only episode. I am going to turn around and make this a free episode of Business Tech Weekly. So it's going to take a little bit. My assistant, I just sent her a message to do that for me. And so what I'm going to do is have you go to gspn.tv/checkwriter. By the time this is published online, that episode should, that link, if you go to gspn.tv/checkwriter, it will take you to episode number 18 of Business Tech Weekly, where you'll learn about what Checkwriter is and really some of the reservations that I had over using this service and all of this stuff. But I will tell you, I deposit thousands of dollars worth of checks every single month using the Checkwriter software, and it works perfectly. And of course, there's an entire episode of Business Tech Weekly about that topic. And again, gspn.tv/checkwriter. So going back to Clint, as far as the thoughts on Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio is a service that I have never personally used. Okay, I have never personally used it. I have been a participant on a Blog Talk Radio show on multiple occasions. I'd say 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I've been invited to come on as a guest of Blog Talk Radio. But I will tell you, as a podcast consultant, I have a ton of clients over the last 2.5 years who have said, Cliff, I'm doing a Blog Talk Radio show, and I really need to do something different. All right. So that, number one, I've had a lot of people who say, you know what, it's just not working out the way I want it to work out. The audio quality isn't there. I'm not able to get that nice, clean studio sound when I'm doing the live show. The people who are coming, they hear a bunch of people. It sounds like they're on the telephone, and all of this other stuff. The most closely related service that I've ever used is TalkShoe.com, TalkShoe.com. Now, I used to be a huge fan of TalkShoe.com, and I'm still an okay fan of it. I mean, I still use TalkShoe from time to time, but not nearly the way that I used to. I used to use TalkShoe, and I would put up with some of the technical limitations when I was making a couple $1,000s a month as a result of using their services. Back in the day when they were a fresh new internet startup company, they had a lot of venture capital money that came in, and they were actually paying podcast producers per download a pretty decent amount. I mean, of course, today I recognize that it's nowhere near what I could get as a sponsored podcast, but back in the day, it was pretty good, and especially since I was doing stuff as a hobby, getting a couple grand every month to do a podcast on your and to do that live on TalkShoe, that was great. And so I was very happy about it. In fact, I think there's the CEO of the company, Dave Nelson, he's been interviewed on Podcast Answer Man before. And so if you go way back in the archives, you'll hear those interviews. Now, what do I think about it today? I still think that these are great services for people who want to dip their toes into the water of podcasting, but have no desire whatsoever to actually create or to go out and buy any equipment at all. And they have no desire to try to figure out how to create a website, no desire to how to figure out how to do this RSS stuff and submitting to iTunes. All of that stuff's beyond them, and they have no desire to figure it out. And for people who want to just talk with some other people and have a hobby of this stuff, then I am all for TalkShoe.com and all for Blog Talk Radio. In fact, I will even go so far as to say one of the huge benefits of Blog Talk Radio is the fact that there is a very decent-sized community over there. And chances are, if you launch a show on Blog Talk Radio, because of the traffic they have on their site, that when you go live, you will find that you could pick up an audience just by people browsing around there. There's a lot of synergy happening there. Now, the thing is, though, is this. I particularly don't like telephone recorded conversations and having those released as a podcast. In fact, I will tell you right now, I am very much, I'm an audio snob. I will admit that to you. I will not subscribe to a podcast that is a recorded phone conversation. I won't. If I saw your album artwork and it impressed me, if I saw the topic of your podcast and it impressed me, and it's something that I'm passionate about, the chances of hitting play are very likely. If I click play, if I subscribe to your podcast or click play on it to preview it in iTunes, and I hear the host of the show in telephone, it's glorious 8,000 hertz glory. If I hear the host of the podcast having a telephone quality, I can almost guarantee you, I cannot think of any exceptions to this rule. I would hands down not subscribe to your podcast. Or if I accidentally did hit subscribe before previewing it for the very first time, I will unsubscribe immediately. I can't think of my friend Dan Miller. I love his podcast, but if he was to record his podcast on Blog Talk Radio or TalkShoe.com and it was on a telephone, I would not subscribe to it. And somebody says it sounds like Dan Miller's, first shows. Maybe they were like that, and I'm glad I didn't catch them when they were like that. But at least he had, for the longest time, at least he had a $20 lapel mic from Radio Shack and was recording releasing the shows at 64 kilobits. Per second. And sure, that was very low quality, but that was about the lowest quality I'd be willing to go. That'd be about the lowest quality I'd be willing to go. But no, I would not listen to a podcast that was recorded by telephone. And I apologize if I'm offending anybody out there. I know that there are a lot of podcasters, in fact, a ton of lost podcasters who use TalkShoe to record and release their shows. And when I listen to podcasts, you're up against other very highly produced and easy on the ear shows. And I like things that are comfortable to listen to. Damon and Carlton Lindelof is probably right now, of course, now they no longer podcast, but these are the co-producers of the TV show Lost, or were, and their podcast is the lowest quality podcast that I had ever stayed subscribed to. And they actually had they had decent equipment. It's just that they recorded their podcast and released it at some ridiculously low kilobits per second. They must have been using the lame encoder to crunch that thing down, and it sounded horrendous. But at least it was better than a telephone quality call. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of recorded telephone conversations. Now, you put the host in the studio, you put the host on a good studio mic, and you put the person that they're interviewing on the telephone. I'm completely cool with that. But I am not cool with 100% telephone quality call. Now, with TalkShoe, it is very possible to do this. And when I was using TalkShoe, this is exactly what my process was. I was using TalkShoe to record my show live, or to do my show live, people could call in, they could interact, they could be on hold, and I would unmute them individually, and I would bring them into the show, and then I could mute them individually. I was able to, it was just like I had a live panel of callers calling in. And but what I was doing is, while TalkShoe has the ability to record that entire show and turn it into an MP3 and release it out into your RSS feed, or at least the TalkShoe RSS feed, while it has the ability to do all of those things, I didn't let it. Instead, I was recording everything locally in studio, so that I, as the host, or my wife as the co-host, we were in studio quality, and the callers were being recorded on my end because I had the equipment to do so. And the callers sounded like they were on the telephone. It sounded no different than any FM radio station call-in radio talk show. So, and then, of course, TalkShoe does allow you, and I believe Blog Talk may allow you to do this. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I've heard some people say that they actually charge you a premium subscription to be able to actually upload your own recordings and replace their recordings of the telephone call. But anyway, with these services, you should be able to have the ability to take your own full quality recording and upload it over top of theirs. And that's what gets placed into the feed. There's so many problems with this scenario that I just decided it's not the way that I want to do it, unless there's a financial benefit for me doing so. And when TalkShoe quit paying their producers, I quit producing my shows there. So anyway, what I would like to say is that if you're okay with that quality, it's fine. And it's going to be great for the live show, by the way. The live show via the telephone quality, not a problem at all. There's a lot that I will let happen in a live venue that I won't let happen in a pre-recorded. For example, I'm broadcasting this right now live on Ustream. The video quality of what you see in my studio, it's pretty low video quality. The audio quality is actually really good via Ustream, but the video is very low. But you know what? It's one click of the button. One single click of the button is all it would take for me to record each and every single one of these shows that I record on Thursdays. Now, do I record them and let people come in and watch the recorded video later? No, I do not. Because with the live, you can interact. There's a little bit of the feel of interaction. But with the pre-recorded, I don't want anything in low quality to be pre-recorded and just have you sit there and watch a low quality production that I produce. I would much rather have high quality audio. And here's the thing. I did a show a long time ago called The Pitfalls of the Live Show Format. And I'm okay if this is what you want to do. If you want to try out using these services, it is a great way to podcast for free. At least with TalkShoe, I know you can podcast for free. You just you go in, set up an account, schedule the call, and you're good to go. But there are a couple things to be concerned about, I think, and that is, number one, jumping right into a live show jumping right into a live show. And if you're jumping into a live show, the chances are you're going to focus on that live audience in your show. And if you focus on your live audience, my concern is that you will alienate the people who download your podcast. And I will tell you right now, the potential audience for your content, it is all in the downloaded content. That's where the value of your show really is for the most part. All right. So the thing is, if you're using a service like TalkShoe, and again, I'm talking about TalkShoe because I don't know enough about Blog Talk Radio, but if you're using a service like TalkShoe that has these telephone call-ins, and you are, as the host, are being recorded by telephone, number one, the chances of somebody subscribing to your recorded telephone show is so much lower. All right, so much lower than what it could be. And you're just going to lose some people. Now, does that mean that nobody will subscribe to your podcast? No. If your content is great enough, some people will overlook the quality of your production. But I will tell you that I personally won't subscribe to a podcast that's a telephone call. And I know that I'm not the only person out there that feels that way. I will tell you that. Now, I can't say that all podcast listeners feel that way, but I know that I do, and I know I'm not alone. Now, the other thing is of course, this whole idea of being inclusive. One of the things that I do here, of course, you occasionally hear me reference during the live shows, you hear me reference somebody says something in the chat room. Now, there's a lot of comments going on in the chat room right now. The way I look at the chat room is it is a way for people to provide live feedback to me as I'm recording the show. But I can tell you right now, there's a ton of conversation that's been happening ever since I mentioned PayPal, and then there's even some conversation that's going on there back and forth about audio quality and stuff like that. And I've even gotten some questions that are being asked in the podcast, but they're going by so fast, I can't keep up with it all. And so what I do is I say, listen, if you really want to leave some feedback for Podcast Answer Man, the way to do that, to get your input into the show, give me a call on the voicemail feedback hotline at 859-795-4067. The phone number again, 859-795-4067. That's how I accept feedback. I don't necessarily take a lot of live calls anymore, although I certainly have the ability to simply press a button like this and bring in a call at any time. I've got the phone number in the chat below or above the chat room on gspn.tv/live. People could dial in. Honestly, I think it's right now the ringer is set to off, so I wouldn't even hear it because I'm not asking for people to call in. Or I could dial out to TalkShoe, and I could actually give them the TalkShoe number, and I could have 100 people on hold if I wanted to. But my thing is I don't want to focus the main attention on the live show. And one of the things I don't like to hear is like, oh, folks, if you're listening to this on the podcast download, you're really missing out because the real action is here in the live. The real action is here in the live. Oh, and for those video podcasts, if you're listening to this on the audio only feed, what you're not seeing right here, you need to go back and look this section up in the video because you really are missing out. Whenever I feel as a listener of the show that I am not fully engaged in your show, then I feel left out and alienated. And the chances of everybody out there who would potentially love your show, of them being available at the same date and time that you have scheduled to do your show is very low. Now, are you going to have a small audience that absolutely does that? Yes. You will. And when I say a small audience, I'm talking, is it possible for you to have 200 or 300 people a week in your show, in your chat room? Absolutely. Is that a lot of people? No, it's not. It's not when you consider the fact that, and this I do know for a fact, that the downloaded audience potential, you're only going to get at most 10 to 15% of your audience. And if you get that much, you are doing a lot of things right. But 10 to 15% of your overall audience may come and participate in a live show. For example, today I've been recording since 8:30 this morning. On average, there's been somewhere between 20 and 55 people in the chat room throughout the day today. All right? All the content that I will that will get delivered out, 60,000 people will actually receive all of these episodes, a total of 60,000 people. And so obviously a very small percentage of the people are here live. Now, do I value the people that are here live? Absolutely. And there's a lot of reasons why as a podcaster, you should very much value the people who come and join you live. But if your content, you actually take in phone calls. Here's an example. Let me give you an example of some of the early days of TalkShoe when people would start their very first podcast. You get somebody on TalkShoe, they fire up their show, and they have an idea of what they want to do with their podcast. And so let me give you an example. Hey, everybody, my name's Cliff Ravenscraft. This is my Podcast Answer Man show, and I'm going to use this platform here to answer your questions. And let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Cliff Ravenscraft. I've been doing podcasting for a while now and all of this other stuff. And so let me tell you about what my first topic is today. We're going to talk about microphones, condenser microphones. And it's like, oh, wait, we just got a caller. It looks like so-and-so is just in. Hi, what's your name? Hi, my name's Bobby. Hi, Bobby. How you doing? I'm doing good. I was just on browsing around the site, and I saw that you had a podcast. So you talk about podcasting here? Yes, I do. Do you have any questions? No. I think podcasting is pretty silly, but I was just browsing around the site. Well, hey, man, thanks for calling. It just totally ruins the flow of the show if you are just getting into your groove. And Dave says that's why they have screeners and call screeners and stuff like that. But absolutely, there are ways that you can do this. But for the person who is the independent podcast producer who is just trying out podcasting for the very first time, chances are you're not going to have a call screener. And I'm just saying it is a potential issue that you'll get too focused on your live audience, and you will spend all of your time communicating with that live audience, which people are going to be coming in and out. And you'll never really get to that roadmap you have. And so this leads me into just some advice that I have for podcasters in general. And no matter if you're using, and I'm not saying don't use Blog Talk. Certainly try them out. In fact, one of the things that I've been thinking about doing is creating a Blog Talk radio show myself, just so I have some experience with it. I want to see what it's like. Maybe I'll see if I can get Podcast Answer Man at 2 p.m. on Thursdays to be a Blog Talk radio show. I mean, I certainly have the broadcast host that I can just fire up and have another chat room going. So I don't know. Maybe I should do that and let you know my experience with it and podcast about it. But anyway, I just wanted to share with you my two concerns are recorded audio quality of a telephone is very low, and you will lose potential downloadable subscribers. And the people who download your show week after week, those are the ones who are going to be the most consistent and stay around for the longest. And then, of course, the other concern with these live show formats is that unless you have a really good feeling of where you are going with your show, providing an outline ahead of time, and don't let anybody get you deviated from the course. Now, is it okay to take a couple tangents here and there? Absolutely. But certainly, I would suggest that you have a roadmap laid out for each and every episode of where you want to go, and you need to be in the driver's seat. You need to be in the driver's seat. I mean, for example, if I were really going to focus so heavily on the live audience, gosh, I'd probably still be talking about PayPal. But anyway, I value my live audience, and I will tell you this: the people who will come and participate in your show live, these are your most loyal community members. These are the people you do need to spend and focus your time on. I love seeing David in here. I love seeing Jim in the chat room, and I love seeing Charlie, and I love seeing Jonathan in here. And by the way, a lot of these people are using their handles like Pfeiffer1863. I just know his name's Jim Beagley. And stuff like that. So get to know the people who come to your live show. And if you really want to talk with them, do that in the pre-show and do it in the post-show. Get and build some relationship with them that way. But during the recording of your show, you be in control of where you start and where you stop along the way when it comes to the path that you've laid out for the content that you produce. If you can be consistent in that, then you'll overcome the potential pitfalls of the live show format. And again, there's nothing wrong with starting out with telephone quality if you don't have a budget for anything more. And I want to say I am an audio snob. I am. I confess it to you. I almost hate it myself. I released, matter of fact, yet last week, go back and listen to episode 166 of Podcast Answer Man. I will tell you right now, I will never, ever listen to episode 166 of Podcast Answer Man ever again. Do you want to know why? Because that podcast was not recorded the same way that I normally do. Instead, I think I had set it to, I can't remember what the setting was. Was it 156 kilobits per second? Anyway, I actually recorded the podcast at 1 bit rate, and then I opened it up in Adobe Audition, and when I saved it back out, it recompressed the file, and it's got that little wishy-washy, garbled sound, and it's like, oh, I cannot believe that I did that. And I did it for all the shows that I recorded last week. Did I release them? Yes. Am I happy with the audio quality of any of the shows that I released last week? Absolutely not. This morning when I went to record, did I make sure that I was back at my normal settings on my Adderall? You better believe I did. So I am an audio snob, but let me tell you, I got my start with some really crappy sounding audio. And so don't let me water down your experience because I am an audio snob. I want to encourage you, get out there and start. You didn't hear me. Clint called in earlier and he says, hey, thanks for the thoughts on that. I got a snowball. It sounds like I might need to go and buy a $20 microphone, a $20 dynamic microphone and a mixer. And I'm like, in my mind, it's like, okay, I mean, if you've got the snowball, just stick with the snowball. It's not a big deal. But I will say that, it probably will get rid of a little bit of the echo in the room. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in another call that I wasn't planning on bringing in, but I know it happens to be here. I just didn't have a chance to edit it down. And I'm going to bring this in. I don't know who this is. It might be Tim. It might be somebody else. So let me just click play.
Hi, Cliff. This is Tim Chatton, and this feedback is for the podcast Answer Man podcast.
All right. So before I go any further, I want to say, Tim, your podcast or your audio, you're coming in loud and clear. You're a million times better than any telephone recorded call. And you certainly you're up close enough to the mic to where that you don't sound like you're completely in a tin can. But I want you to listen closely. And if you listen real close, you will hear, and I do hear your voice echoing off of the walls in your room. And now this isn't enough to keep me from subscribing to your podcast, but your content of your podcast would have to be so much better to keep me listening to a condenser microphone like this. And I have podcasts that are recorded on condenser microphones that I do love. In fact, I'll tell you the best condenser microphone recorded podcast in the world is Words of Encouragement. Now, I will tell you, Rick Tarrant's a professional, and he does a lot of work in this area. But Words of Encouragement, I happen to know, is recorded on a condenser microphone. But, Tim, I'm going to go ahead and play this. It's 4 minutes in length. I'm not sure if I'll play the entire feedback, but do listen to your voice. You will hear the echo.
Hi, Cliff. This is Tim Chatton, and this feedback is for the podcast Answer Man podcast. Well, Cliff, it was great to listen to your last episode, and thanks for answering back about WordPress and your thoughts there. I wanted to send some feedback about USB mics, snowballs, and condenser mics and that whole topic. And I know you you absolutely hate, condenser mics and USB mics. I shouldn't say you hate condenser mics because they have their place. But I'm recording this. I'm not editing this or doing anything to this audio. This is as is. This is the Blue Mic USB Yeti. It's their brand new mic that came out in January of 2010. And this is my very first mic I have owned. It's $100 at Amazon. And I have to say, I am very, very impressed with this mic. And for my first mic, I decided I want a USB mic because I want the ability to simply plug this into my Mac Mini and start recording. I want the ability to plug this into my iPad via the camera connections kit and start recording high quality audio. And I didn't want the big, setup of a mixer board because the current state of my life is I'm moving around so much that I need the flexibility to be able to just pick up this mic, my iPad, or the Mac Mini and be off and recording. I could even have a Mac Mini and my iPad used as the screen now through VNC and the MiFi. So I want the flexibility of just simply being able to pick up this mic and my iPad and be off and running to get good sounding audio. And you mentioned the problem of it picking up every little sound. And And one thing that's just blown me away about the Blue Yeti is a few months ago, I lived in a dorm room, and it was a pretty loud dorm room. In the next room, it was very audible that there were people making noise. And I thought, there's no way that this mic, this condenser mic, this USB mic, would be able to block out that sound without me doing anything to my dorm room. And I was wrong. When I listened to the audio after recording, I noticed all that sound I was hearing in the next room was blocked off because of the way the mic was set up to record. Because this mic has a setup where it just takes audio from the very front of the mic and doesn't touch anything around it. And it impressed me because I have, of course, thought, hey, audio bounces around walls and that's got to make it in the recording. And I was impressed that it did not. So that was kind of cool. So I think not all condenser mics have that huge problem of capturing every little sound. And I've never used a Snowball, and I've heard bad things about those. But from those that have used the Yeti, most love this microphone. And for those that need the flexibility of, not the flexibility, but the portability, rather, of being able to just, grab your mic and go, I think USB mics have their place. And I think down the road, yes, I'll probably get a mixer. I'll probably get, the Heil mics or whatever. But right now, I think, and for a lot of people, I think USB mics may be a good alternative. And I think everyone should have at least one USB mic so they're able to just grab your mic and go and get a high quality recording on the road. And I think that's a great way to do that. And I know there's a lot of handheld recorders and things like that work well. But I love having my awesome USB mic from Blue that works really well. So sorry if I was a bit wordy, but I am just so excited and happy about this USB mic that I wanted to share my thoughts there. And I think that for those that need to be able to travel around with their studio, this is a great way to go. So I really enjoy the podcast and have a blessed day.
All right, Tim, thank you very much. I did go ahead and play the entire 4 minutes. And you know what? I'm glad that you're very happy with it. I think if you ever go to something like a Heil PR40 down the road, and you have an opportunity to record a podcast, the chances are that even though you may have the Yeti on the road with you and you could record a podcast, chances are you may want to wait till you get back. You'll likely be like I was, and you'll wait until you get home till you get to the Heil on the mixer and everything like that to record your podcast. But then again, maybe you're not an audio snob like I am, and I confess that I am an audio snob, and not everybody is one. And but yeah, I mean, if you listen to that, I certainly heard the echo of your voice off of the walls in your room. Your voice was loud. Your voice was clear, and that has more to do with your mic placement than anything else. You were right up on the microphone and talking clearly. There were a couple pops in there. It doesn't sound like you have a pop filter on that, but I mean, other than that, I mean, obviously, I would listen to your podcast if you had a topic that was a topic that I was passionate about. I would certainly listen to your podcast. With the audio quality that comes out of either the Yeti or the Blue Snowball microphone. It's not that I wouldn't listen to those. I'm just saying that the combination of USB and that are the two things that I don't like about it. I think there are other options. For $100, if I had $100, of course the issue is that if you get it like a Shure SM58 mic, which by the way is a pretty decent mic for podcasting. I mean, you get a Shure SM58 and an audio interface or a mixer. I would certainly suggest a small mixer. You've got a really great way to produce some audio without that echo of the voice in the background. Again, it's just one of those things, and I will tell you right now, I'm at the point now where I personally do not like to record or to release a podcast. Like right now, I'm recording my audio into an Edirol recorder, and I'm using the Heil PR40. But I'll be honest with you, it would kill me to release this podcast. Hit stop to tag the file and to release it to you directly. I personally and it's I'm obsessive compulsive about my audio quality. I have to run the multi-band compressor from Adobe Audition. I just love the fullness and the richness of what that process does to my recording, so much so that I would not want to release this podcast to you, even though I've got a high quality mic and I even have some processing going on before it hits the Edirol. I still would not want to release this recording to my audience without running it through the multi-band compressor that really beefs up the sound even further. So, but yeah, you make some good points there. Portability and the ease of use of just having one little device to plug in and to go. I think USB mics could be a great solution for people creating video screencasts and all that other stuff. And certainly you can record some great podcasting content. Just make sure that content is above par, and I think you'll do pretty well. And yeah, very cool. All right, so I do have one other piece of feedback. I am majorly late for my next show, though. I'm wondering if Andy's going to kill me. But I do want to play one more piece of audio feedback. And you know what? I'm going to hold it off for next week, and I'm going to close the show. So let me just click this button right here. And Walter called in some feedback, and it's actually some constructive criticism of the Podcast Answer Man show. And I actually want to play it and let you guys hear the criticism of something that comes up from time to time on Podcast Answer Man. I certainly notice it as it's happening and after it's happening, and I think about it a lot. If you want to know what the one thing or what one of the many things that I do that even drives me crazy from time to time, then you'll hear that in Walter's call next week. That's right. Episode 168 of Podcast Answer Man will be the criticism, the constructive criticism. And I'm very thankful for Walter, by the way, of the way that he approached his criticism. And you'll get to hear that as well. Anyway, I do want to mention that you can be you can check out Adobe Audition 101 if you're interested over there at podcastanswerman.com/products. Just head over to podcastanswerman.com. There's a whole big list of different video training tutorials I have over there, and I encourage you to check them out. In the Adobe Audition, I actually show everything you need to know from beginning to end with using Adobe Audition, why I use it, the secret sauce that I use to process every single episode of every podcast that I produce, with the exception of my walkcasts. If I use the Edirol or my iPhone to go out and walk through the neighborhood, I don't really run that through the multi-band compressor most of the time. But anything I record in the studio certainly does. Anyway, Jorge's in the chat room, he says, I got the Adobe Audition 101, and it is worth it. And actually, he says, worth it. But I'm pretty sure he meant to put the R in there. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I am so sorry for those of you in the chat room. You guys have said so many things related to the topics that I've covered today, and it's going to take me forever to go back into the chat archives later to see what all that was about. But I appreciate my live audience, and I appreciate you guys who are downloading this podcast just as much, and I thank each and every one of you. Again, head over to podcastanswerman.com/products. See if there's anything there that would help you out. If you think of any digital video training tutorials you'd like me to create, send me an email, feedback@gspn.tv. And of course, I do want to hear from you. If you have questions for the Podcast Answer Man show, comments related to all the stupid stuff I say every week, give me a call, 859-795-4067. Again, the phone number, 859-795-4067. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week. And until next time, I encourage you to join the community.